It was another cold autumn morning in New York City. The air was sharp, and the wind carried that damp smell of rain and concrete. People hurried past one another with collars up and coffee cups clenched in gloved hands, eyes locked on their phones or the sidewalk. No one noticed the beggar sitting near the 42nd Street subway station except to avoid her. But Jonathan Grant wasn't just anyone. He was a name, a face, a brand, a self-made millionaire before 30, the man behind Grant Tech, the sleek AI-powered security company that guarded everything from penthouses to power grids. That morning, he was late for a meeting, stepping out of his black town car in a crisp gray coat and handmade shoes, already barking orders through his Bluetooth headset. Then he stopped walking, just like that, as if someone had hit pause on the city around him. Jonathan froze mid-stride, his eyes locked on the figure sitting against the wall, holding a cardboard sign that read, "Please help. Anything. I have 2 kids." She wasn't just any woman. She was her. Her hair was longer now, messy, tangled. Her coat was thin, second-hand, her cheeks hollow, her lips dry. But her eyes, those wide brown eyes filled with fire and pride once upon a time, were the same. "Rachel?" he muttered aloud, not realizing he'd said it. She looked up. It took her a second, then another. Recognition crawled across her face like a slow, painful ghost returning from the dead. "Jonathan," she whispered, voice hoarse. "Of course. It would be you." He didn't know what to say. He had not seen her in almost 8 years. Not since the night she packed her things and slammed the door of their cramped one-bedroom apartment, saying she'd had enough of his empty promises, his obsession with success, his inability to just be present. Back then, he was broke, chasing investors, missing dinners. She wanted love. He wanted legacy. She had left him. At least that's the story he told himself. But now, here she was, sitting on the ground, looking up at him like time had cheated. Them both. The 2 kids sat beside her. A boy, maybe 7 or 8, curled into her side with a too-small jacket. A little girl, maybe 5, asleep with her head in her lap. Jonathan's mouth went dry. "They're yours," Rachel said flatly, before he could even speak. He staggered backward like he'd been punched. "What?" She didn't blink. "You heard me?" Silence stretched between them as traffic roared and people brushed past. Some glanced. Most didn't. I didn't know," he stammered. "You never told me." "Would it have mattered?" She snapped, her voice quiet but sharp. "You had your dream. You were already gone, Jonathan. I just made it official." He knelt slowly, careful not to scare the kids. "Rachel, why didn't you reach out? I would have helped." Rachel laughed, bitter, broken. "Help? You think this is just about money? You left me when I needed a partner. You chose your company over our future. You stopped being mine long before I walked away." Jonathan opened his mouth, then closed it. He looked at the boy again. Brown eyes, sharp jawline, his jawline, and the girl, her curls, her nose, that same dimple he saw in the mirror every morning. He felt sick. "I didn't know," he repeated softer. "I swear, I didn't want your pity. I didn't want your blood money," she said, then looked down at the kids. "But maybe I was wrong." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out his wallet, but she held up a hand. "I don't want cash," she said. "Not like this." He looked around. The street was watching now, not with sympathy, but with curiosity. A rich man kneeling before a beggar. Something unusual. Something not meant to happen. "I'm not leaving you like this," Jonathan said firmly. Let me fix this." Rachel looked at him for a long, quiet moment. Then she turned her eyes to the sky. You can't fix the past, she said, but maybe you can stop running from it. Jonathan Grant, the millionaire tech mogul with everything, money, power, control, lay wide awake in his $4 million penthouse overlooking Central Park, tormented by memories that came crashing in like a tidal wave. Rachel, the woman he had once loved so fiercely, yet let slip through the cracks while he chased validation in Forbes covers and investor meetings. And now she was on the street, with his children. He had stared at their faces for hours in his mind. That little boy's eyes, so eerily familiar. The way the girl's nose scrunched when she slept. It wasn't a fantasy or a maybe. It was fact. And he had missed everything. First words, first steps, first birthdays. All of it. By 5 a.m., he was dressed and standing in his garage, staring at a line of polished cars. The Bentley felt ridiculous. The Porsche, worse. He finally settled on a plain black Jeep, unmarked, modest, and hit the gas like he was running from something. He didn't call his assistant, didn't check his calendar. He just drove downtown, back to that spot near the subway station, the place where everything had changed in one unexpected moment. But when he got there, the wall was empty. The space was bare. No Rachel, no kids. Just a torn cardboard sign on the ground, soggy from the night's rain. His stomach turned. He waited. 10 minutes, then 20. A homeless man nearby watched him. Like a hawk. "You looking for that lady with the kids?" the man finally asked, scratching his beard. Jonathan nodded quickly. Yes, do you know where she went?" The man squinted. "Shelter van came around late last night. Guess they finally talked her into going. She was shivering. Kids, too. You her husband?" Jonathan opened his mouth, paused. "I was," he said. "I still might be." The man grunted. "Try the East River shelter. They don't turn mothers away." He thanked him and didn't waste a second. The East River shelter wasn't the kind of place someone like Jonathan ever stepped foot in. The building was aging, the walls yellowed by time and stories too heavy to hold. The inside smelled like bleach and stale coffee. A receptionist behind a scratched plastic divider looked up and immediately narrowed her eyes at him. "You're lost, I'm guessing?" "I'm looking for someone," Jonathan said. "A woman, Rachel. She had 2 kids with her. She might have come in last night." The woman raised an eyebrow. "You a cop?" "No," he said, then added quietly, "I'm their father." That made her pause. She looked at him long and hard before finally picking up the phone and speaking, quietly into it. A moment later, she buzzed the door open. A staff member led him down a narrow hallway, lined with cots and quiet sobs behind thin curtains. At the very end of the hall was a small private room. The door was open. He could see them. Rachel was asleep sitting upright in a chair, her head against the wall. The kids were curled on the cot, sharing a blanket. The boy's eyes fluttered open first and locked on Jonathan through the open door. They stared at each other. Jonathan stepped in slowly, as if any sudden movement would break the moment. Rachel stirred. Her eyes snapped open. When she saw him, she immediately sat up, tension rippling through her body. "What are you doing here?" she whispered sharply. "I told you I wasn't walking away," Jonathan said gently. "Not this time." She looked tired, not just from sleep, but from life. Her voice cracked. "You said that once before, remember?" He nodded. "Yeah, and I meant it back then. I just didn't know how to fight for you and chase the world at the same time. I chose wrong." She didn't say anything. The boy sat up now, watching. The little girl stirred and opened her eyes. She smiled at Jonathan. Something in him shattered. Rachel saw it. Her expression softened just slightly. "I'm not asking you to forgive me today," he said. "But I want to be in their lives. I want to help. I need to." She studied him for a long time. "It's not about you needing to. It's about them needing someone who stays. Are you that man, Jonathan? Or are you just having a rich man's crisis?" He didn't flinch. "I've had everything," he said. "And still, I lost the only thing that could have ever made me whole." She stared at him, unreadable. Then she looked at her kids and finally whispered, "Then prove it. But not with money, with time, with presence, with truth." Jonathan nodded slowly. I will. He stayed. Not for an hour, not for a day. Jonathan stayed for the whole week. He didn't just visit them at the shelter. He moved into a modest rental nearby. A 2-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and old plumbing. Nothing like the skyline palace he usually slept in. But for once, that didn't matter. He cooked cheap pasta on a rusted stove, shared meals off scratched plates, and every night he read bedtime stories from borrowed books until his voice went hoarse. He watched the kids as they warmed up to him. The boy, Elijah, was cautious, sharp-eyed, too mature for his age, like he'd been forced to grow up too fast. The girl, Nia, was lighter, curious. She held his hand like she'd known him forever. Rachel watched, too, quietly, guardedly. She didn't stop him, but she never fully relaxed either. And he didn't blame her. Why would she trust him after so long? One evening, as the kids played with donated toys in the corner of the shelter's common room, Jonathan found himself sitting beside her on a worn-out couch. He handed her a coffee from the bodega down the block. Black, no sugar, just how she used to like it. She took it without looking at him. "You're not used to living like this, are you?" he exhaled. "No, I'm not." Rachel sipped slowly. "Why haven't you run back to your world yet?" I finally realized it wasn't my world, just a place I was hiding in." She glanced at him. Hiding from what? From guilt. From the kind of man I'd become. From the family I walked away from. She didn't say anything, just stared into her cup. "I remember when you told me you were pregnant," he said suddenly, voice low. "I thought I'd ruined everything, that I couldn't afford to be a father. I panicked. And instead of facing it, I buried myself in work. I figured if I got rich enough, successful enough, maybe none of it would matter." Rachel's eyes flicked to his. "And did it?" "No," he said, voice cracked. "Not even close." She set her cup down. "Do you know how hard it was? Giving birth alone? Watching Elijah cry at night asking where his dad was? Watching Nia get sick and not knowing if I could afford medicine?" Jonathan bowed his head. "I can never repay what I took from you," he whispered. Rachel nodded slowly. "No, you can't. But you can be here now, if you mean it." He looked at her, tears brimming. "I do. I swear it." Elijah ran over at that moment, holding a crumpled drawing. "I drew this," he said proudly. Jonathan took the paper with shaking hands. It was a shaky crayon sketch. 4 stick figures holding hands. A boy, a girl, a woman, and a man with messy hair in a suit. Jonathan stared at the drawing. His heart ached. "Is that me?" he asked, voice barely audible. Elijah shrugged. "Yeah, I guess." Rachel watched the moment, quiet, but something in her expression shifted. Not forgiveness, not yet, but maybe the first crack in the wall she'd built. That night, when they all walked back toward the shelter, Jonathan stopped under a streetlight. "I want to get you out of there," he said. "All of you. A real place. A start. Not charity, not pity. Just a second chance." Rachel turned toward him slowly. "I'm not saying yes yet. I wouldn't expect you to. But," she said, hesitating, "if you're serious, and this isn't just about easing your conscience, then let's see." He nodded. "You'll have my time, my effort, every day." "And what about your pride?" she asked. Jonathan smiled sadly. That died the moment I saw my daughter sleeping on your lap, cold and hungry. I don't need pride. I need a family." She didn't smile. But she didn't walk away either. Maybe, just maybe, a broken past could be rewritten. One honest step at a time. 2 weeks passed. The apartment Jonathan rented for them wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, warm, and safe. 3 small bedrooms, second floor, creaky floors, and windows that actually locked. Rachel didn't say much when she first stepped inside, just carried Nia in her arms and looked around in silence. Elijah ran from room to room, testing doors, flipping light switches, like it was the most exciting place he'd ever seen. Jonathan stood by the door, unsure if he should speak or stay quiet. "This is yours," he said finally, voice soft. "The lease is in your name? I paid for a year in advance?" Rachel turned slowly. "You trust me with it?" "I should have trusted you a long time ago." She didn't reply, just nodded, and began unpacking the worn duffel bag she'd carried from shelter to shelter. Each morning, Jonathan arrived early with groceries and warm breakfast. He helped get Elijah ready for school, holding his tiny backpack, while Rachel brushed his hair. He made Nia's cereal and read stories while Rachel filled out housing documents and appointments for job interviews. They slipped into a rhythm that felt unfamiliar to all of them, but strangely right. At night, the kids begged him to stay for dinner. He didn't argue. One Thursday evening, they sat at a wobbly dinner table eating spaghetti from mismatched bowls. Nia got sauce all over her chin, giggling. Elijah told a story about a spelling test that made them all laugh. Jonathan hadn't laughed like that in years. He'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Rachel watched him quietly. When the kids went to bed, she leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed. "You're good with them," she said finally. He nodded. "They're easy to love." She tilted her head. "And me?" He didn't answer right away. Then, "Always have. Even when I didn't deserve you." Rachel gave a small, tired smile. "You've changed." "I had to," he said, "or I'd lose everything that ever mattered." There was a long silence between them, the kind filled with years of wounds and silence and choices that couldn't be undone. But there was something else now, too. Possibility. She looked down at her hands. "You don't have to keep doing this. I want to. I mean, really want to. Not just to feel better about the past." He stepped closer. "Rachel, I missed birthdays, first words, sick days. I missed your pain. I missed my children's lives. There's no excuse. But if you let me, I want to be here every damn day for what's left. If that means bringing groceries or reading bedtime stories or just fixing a leaky faucet, I'll do it." She exhaled. "You really think it's that simple?" "No," he said. "But I think it's a start." By the third week, Rachel found a part-time job at a small diner. Jonathan offered to help with the kids during her shifts. She hesitated but agreed. Trust, it seemed, was starting to rebuild. Slowly, carefully. He took Elijah to school, picked Nia up from daycare. They started recognizing him, hugging him. Nia began calling him Dad by accident. Elijah, not yet. But he was softer now, less guarded. Then came the letter. Rachel found it in the mailbox one Friday morning, mixed in with coupons and junk. She opened it without thinking, just another envelope. But once she read it, her face drained of color. Jonathan walked in with coffee and paused. "What is it?" She handed him the paper. It was a legal notice. Her former landlord, back when she was barely surviving in a one-room studio with no heat, was suing her for unpaid rent. Over $6,000, plus interest, plus court fees, threatening garnishment and seizure of any known income or assistance. A system designed to punish the poor for being poor. Rachel sat down, stunned. "I didn't even know they were still looking for me." Jonathan read the letter twice, jaw tightening. This is bullshit. They left you in a place with broken windows and rats. I remember. She looked at him, eyes shining. What do I do, Jonathan? I can't fight this. I just started standing again. He didn't hesitate. Then let me fight it for you. I don't want you buying it away. I want justice, not pity. He nodded slowly. Then we'll get both. For the first time, Rachel saw something familiar in his eyes. Rage not at her, not at the past, but at the system that kicked people down and punished them for not staying down. Let me take care of it, he said again. Not as your savior, as your partner. She looked at him for a long, aching moment. Then she whispered, Okay. The following Monday, Jonathan stepped into a law office that looked nothing like his usual boardrooms. This place smelled like old paper and cheap carpet. The receptionist barely looked up when he said he didn't have an appointment. That changed the moment he handed over his business card. Jonathan Grant? She blinked. The Jonathan Grant? He nodded. That's me. But I'm not here on behalf of Grant Tech. I'm here for someone else. 30 minutes later, he was sitting across from a young legal aid attorney named Maya Ellis. Her office was cramped, walls lined with case files and community posters. She looked tired, but sharp. So, she said, scanning the legal notice Rachel received. This landlord's got a reputation. Sued 4 other women this year, all single mothers. He's betting they won't fight back. Jonathan leaned forward. Then he bet wrong. Maya smiled faintly. You're serious about helping her? I am, he said, and I don't want to throw hush money at the problem. I want this man stopped. She studied him. Most rich men would have paid the debt and walked away. I'm not most rich men, he replied, jaw tight. Not anymore, Maya nodded, impressed. Okay, Mr. Grant, let's get to work. Back at the apartment, Rachel cleaned while Nia played with blocks and Elijah did math homework at the table. The air felt normal for the first time in a long time. She heard the key turn and looked up as Jonathan stepped in, holding a folder in one hand and takeout in the other. You didn't have to bring food again, she said, but her voice lacked the usual resistance. Too late, and it's tie, he said, placing it down. Also, good news. We have a case. Rachel blinked. A case? You mean we can fight this? He opened the folder and slid it toward her. Maya Ellis, legal aid, smart, tough. She's seen this before. She thinks we've got a real shot. Rachel sat down, reading through the papers. I didn't think someone like her would take this seriously. Jonathan pulled out a chair. She said it's not just about you. It's about all the women like you he's targeted. Rachel looked at him, something fragile in her expression. You didn't have to go this far. I did, he said, because it's not just about rent. It's about how the world left you behind while I thrived. She was quiet for a while, then said softly, You're becoming the man I used to believe in. He swallowed hard. I hope one day I become the man you can believe in again. She didn't answer, but she didn't look away either. 2 weeks later, they stood together in court. Jonathan wore a basic suit, no designer labels. Rachel wore a thrifted blazer she'd borrowed from a friend at the shelter. She stood tall beside him, nervous but proud. The landlord arrived late, smug, with a greasy lawyer in tow. He barely looked at Rachel, but when he saw Jonathan, he did a double take. The hearing was short but tense. Maya laid out the pattern, targeting vulnerable tenants, manipulating court filings, inflating debts. Jonathan took the stand briefly, confirming the state of the apartment Rachel had once lived in. Mold, rats, no heat. Elijah had gotten sick in that place. Twice. Then Rachel spoke. She told the judge what it felt like to work 2 jobs and still fall behind, to ask for repairs and get ignored, to be pregnant and cold in the middle of winter, knowing no one cared. The courtroom was silent when she finished. The judge took a breath. then ruled. Case dismissed. All claims against Rachel voided. Landlord sanctioned for unethical practices. Potential for further investigation. Rachel stared at the judge, stunned. Then she turned to Jonathan. For the first time since they'd reconnected, she reached out and took his hand. "Thank you," she whispered. He squeezed it gently. "You did this, Rachel. I just stood beside you." As they left the courtroom, Elijah ran up and wrapped his arms around her legs. Nia clapped and shouted, "We won!" Rachel crouched and held them both tightly. She looked up at Jonathan. "You know," she said quietly, "for a man who used to run from everything, you've changed." He smiled. "I had to lose everything before I realized what really mattered." Spring came slow that year. The air was still sharp in the mornings, but the cold had softened. Tiny green buds pushed out from the tree limbs like hope, finally testing the world again. Inside the apartment, laughter had become something common. Not loud, not forced, just part of the everyday. Rachel had started working full-time at the diner. She was saving money, managing bills, and even talking about going back to school. Jonathan still showed up every day, early mornings, late dinners, helping with homework, folding laundry, changing light bulbs. Not because she asked him to, because he wanted to. One evening, as the kids slept and the apartment went quiet, Rachel made 2 mugs of tea and sat beside him on the couch. "You know," she said, her voice softer than usual. "You're here." More than I expected. Jonathan took the tea, smiling. "Do you want me to stop?" She shook her head. "No, I just didn't believe you'd stay this long. I've been waiting for you to disappear again." "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "I'm not that man anymore." Rachel watched him for a while. "I'm trying to believe that." He met her eyes. "What's stopping you?" She looked down at her hands. "Fear, history, knowing that people always say the right things, until they don't." He nodded. "Then let me earn it. One day at a time." Rachel leaned back, sipping her tea, and didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she said, "The kids talk about you like you've always been around. It's strange." "It scares me," Jonathan admitted, "because I wasn't. I miss so much, and they forgive me so easily, it almost hurts." "That's kids," she said. "They love first. Ask questions later." He looked at her, hesitating. "And what about you?" She smiled faintly. "I'm not a kid." They both laughed. But something hung between them now, a tenderness that hadn't been there before. Not tension, not anger. Something else. Rachel reached across the couch and rested her hand lightly on his. "I want to trust you again," she said. "But I also want to know who you are now. Not the man I loved before. The one sitting here now." He turned his palm upward and closed his fingers gently around hers. "I don't know who I was back then," he said, "but I know who I am now. I'm a father. And if you'll let me, maybe one day I'll be more than that to you again." She didn't answer, but she didn't let go. Days turned into weeks. Jonathan enrolled Elijah in soccer and showed up to every practice. He bought Nia her first backpack for kindergarten and taught her how to tie her shoes. Rachel started smiling more, humming when she made dinner, texting Jonathan in the middle of the day. Small things that once seemed impossible. One Saturday afternoon, they took the kids to the park. The sun was out, rare and golden. Rachel sat on the grass while Jonathan pushed Nia on the swing and raced Elijah across the field. A woman nearby whispered to her friend, "Isn't that Jonathan Grant? The tech guy?" Rachel heard it but said nothing. She just watched him, laughing with their children, knees in the dirt, hair messy, a stain on his shirt from Nia's juice box. That was the man she saw now. Not the face on a magazine cover. Just a dad. Just a man. Later that evening, as they walked home, Nia asleep in Jonathan's arms, Elijah holding Rachel's hand. He looked over and said, "You know, I never thought this kind of life would make me feel full." Rachel smiled. "Money makes you rich. This makes you human." He nodded slowly. "You're the bravest person I've ever known." She looked up at him. "I didn't feel brave. I felt abandoned." Jonathan stopped walking. "I know. And if I could take it back, I would. But I can't. So instead, I'll stay. I'll love them and you, until the past doesn't hurt anymore." She studied him, her eyes unreadable. Then she leaned up and kissed his cheek. "I'm not ready for everything," she said. "But maybe I'm ready for a little bit." He smiled, holding Nia closer. "A little bit is more than I deserve." Rachel nodded. "It's enough for now, enough for now." The summer came with longer days and warmer light, and with it came something neither of them dared say out loud: peace. There were still hard days. Elijah had nightmares sometimes, the kind that made him curl into Rachel's side and refuse to let go. Nia got sick for 3 days straight, feverish and crying while Rachel sat at her bedside with a cold cloth. Jonathan took turns holding her, whispering, "Daddy's here," until she finally slept. But through it all, they stayed close, together. Jonathan's routine became their routine. He was no longer just the man helping out. He was dad, present, reliable. And for Rachel, that slowly began to mean something else, a partner. One night after Elijah's school recital, where he stuttered through 2 lines and still got the loudest applause, Jonathan drove them home in the Jeep. Nia was asleep in her car seat, head tilted sideways. Elijah played with a balloon, giggling in the back. Rachel looked out the window, quiet for a while. Then, "You know what scared me most after you left?" Jonathan glanced at her. "What?" "Not the money, not the cold, not even the loneliness," she said softly. "It was the silence. Not knowing how to answer Elijah when he first asked me if he had a father." Jonathan's grip on the wheel tightened. "What did you tell him?" "I told him you were chasing something important," she said. "But that didn't mean he wasn't." He swallowed hard, throat tight. "I don't deserve your kindness." "It wasn't for you," she said. "It was for him." They pulled up to the apartment. The lights were on in the hallway, casting a soft glow through the curtains. As Jonathan carried Nia inside and laid her in bed, Rachel stood in the doorway, watching him. When he stepped out of the room, she said quietly, "You're not the same man I left." He turned to her. "I hope not." "No," she said. "That man chased the world. This one comes home." He stepped closer, unsure. "Rachel, is there still a place for me? With you, I mean?" She didn't speak right away. Then she nodded, slowly. "There could be," she said. "But you'll have to earn it like you're earning them." He reached for her hand, and she let him take it. He didn't pull her close, didn't kiss her, didn't rush it. He just stood with her in the hallway, quietly holding her hand. Later that week, Maya called with unexpected news. "Your landlord's case," she said. "It's not over, turns out we dug up enough for a class action. You weren't the only one. There are at least 9 others." Rachel listened, stunned. "What does that mean?" "It means you can take this further. You can speak, on record, make this public, make people listen." Rachel hesitated. "I don't want to be on the news." "You don't have to be," Maya said, "but you have a voice. And if you use it, you could protect others like you. Poor women, single mothers, women who don't get a second chance." That night, Rachel sat at the kitchen table with the paperwork in front of her. Jonathan sat across from her, quietly waiting. "You think I should do this?" she asked. "I think you're the bravest woman I know," he said. "And whatever you choose, I'll back you." She looked down. I was a beggar on the street not long ago. Who's going to listen to me now? He reached across the table and placed his hand over hers. Everyone. She looked into his eyes. He meant it. She signed the papers. A week later, her story was on the community news blog, a small piece. No names mentioned, but the message was loud. Loud enough that others stepped forward. Loud enough that Rachel got a call from a local women's shelter asking her to speak. Not just about the landlord, but about surviving, about resilience. Rachel stood on a makeshift stage, hands trembling. Jonathan and the kids sat in the front row, waiting. She spoke. I used to think losing everything meant failure, she said. But now I see it was the beginning. Because when I was down, the world forgot me. But my children didn't. And now, neither will I. Her voice cracked, but she kept going. I thought I had nothing. Turns out I had strength. And a story worth telling. She stepped down into Jonathan's arms. He held her tight, in front of everyone. Not because it was a victory, but because she was finally whole. The air was different that morning. There was a stillness in it, like the world was, pausing just long enough to let something sacred settle in. Jonathan stood by the stove, flipping pancakes while Nia danced around in her pajamas, and Elijah sat at the table, telling some wild story about a frog he saw near the school. Rachel came out of the bedroom in a faded t-shirt and jeans, hair tied back, looking like peace in human form. She walked over, took the spatula from Jonathan's hand, and said, "You're going to burn them." He grinned. "That's why I was hoping you'd come save breakfast." Nia giggled. Elijah rolled his eyes. That was their rhythm now. Light teasing, soft mornings, warm laughter. Something they'd all built from the ruins. Not overnight. Not by magic. But day by steady day. After breakfast, Rachel pulled Jonathan aside, her voice low but firm. "There's something I need to tell you," she said. "I've been offered a job." Jonathan blinked. "A new one?" She nodded. "Full-time, at the shelter, as a coordinator. They said after the article and the way I handled that legal case, they think I'd be a great advocate. Real salary, benefits. It's a big deal." Jonathan smiled wide. "That's incredible, Rachel." She didn't smile. "Not yet. There's more," she said. "They want me to speak. At events, panels. Maybe even work on housing reform issues. It would mean longer hours, more commitment." He nodded, already understanding. "And you're worried I won't stick around if your life gets full." She looked at him with those deep, honest eyes. "I'm not the woman I was when I met you. I can't just follow anymore. I need someone who walks beside me." Jonathan stepped closer. "I've been beside you every step since I found you again." "Yes," she said. "But now I need to know. Are you walking this path with me because you love me, or because you still feel guilty?" He paused. The question hit deep, but he didn't run from it. Not this time. "I'll always carry guilt, Rachel," he said. "But that's not why I stayed. I stayed because I remembered who you were. And then I discovered who you'd become. You're stronger now, fiercer. You're not just the woman I lost. You're the woman I admire." She stared at him, unreadable. "I'm in love with this version of you," he added, "and I want to walk with you. Not in front, not behind, right next to you." Rachel smiled then, small and quiet. "Okay, then let's walk." 6 months later, they stood together outside a courthouse, not as defendants, not as broken pieces, but as advocates. Rachel had just testified at a city housing committee hearing. Her story, once hidden in shame, now echoed through the chambers of government buildings. Women stopped her afterward, thanked her, hugged her. Jonathan waited beside her, not as her shadow, but as her anchor. That night, back at the apartment, after the kids were in bed, she turned to him. You know what I was thinking today? What? That woman on the street corner? The one you found that day? She's gone. He looked at her, unsure. Gone? She died that night, Rachel said softly. And the woman standing here now? She was born from everything after. Jonathan stepped closer. And what about the man who found her? She looked up at him, a smile teasing her lips. He turned out all right. He kissed her then. Not the kind of kiss that demands, the kind that promises. And when she kissed him back, it wasn't a restart. It was something entirely new. Years passed. The apartment became a home filled with memories. Nia grew into her curls and her wild questions. Elijah became a young man with fire in his eyes and purpose in his step. Rachel kept speaking, kept helping. And Jonathan, he stepped away. From Grant Tech eventually. He built a nonprofit instead. One that fought for people like the woman he once left behind. They never married. Not because they didn't believe in it, but because they believed in choice. In choosing each other every day. And they did. Through late nights, through broken appliances, through scraped knees and tired tears. Through moments of fear and waves of gratitude. Through silence, through joy. He had once been a man with everything and no soul. Now, he was a man with less, and somehow, everything. All because one day, on a crowded street corner, he saw her. Again, forgotten, broken, begging, and finally remembered what truly mattered. And this time, he never walked away. Walked away.